Welcome to Purpose Uprising. I'm your host, Jessica O'Kane, and this podcast is a deeply personal exploration about what it means to truly live a life of purpose. In this podcast series, I've been speaking to really extraordinary people. This whole idea is that this is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things with their lives, doing things in an unconventional way and really owning and tuning into their authenticity. So to me, these are people who have either influenced or inspired my journey, or they've directly impacted my self-discovery journey and my personal growth journey. So I'm really excited that you're here. In today's episode, I am speaking with Erica Rankin. Erica is someone that I connected with on LinkedIn ages ago. In fact, I met her at an in-person event that was run by my coach at the time, Ali Razakos. She was hosting a women's circle in Toronto, and I was able to go and be there in person, and this is where I met Erica. And she was so fabulous. She was wearing like these pink cowboy boots, and instantly I'm like, I need to know this chick. She's badass. And she had started a food brand. So at this event, we had her vegan protein cookie dough bites. And that is the first time that I met Erica. Ever since then, I've followed her journey on LinkedIn, and she's always shown up in such a refreshingly authentic way. And it's refreshing because I think so many people are censoring themselves and holding pieces of themselves back. So in this conversation, we talk a lot about embracing failures and how to see the opportunities within them. We talk about reinvention as a really natural part of life. We talk about being reborn every single day and how to accept and embrace all parts of ourselves, even the parts that we think are ugly. If you are new to me, I am a life purpose coach. I believe so strongly that each of us, every single person, is here on this earth for a reason. And after seeking out answers to what the hell is my bigger why and what is my purpose, for 7 years working in a corporate career in marketing and sales, I finally made my way into a people management role where I thought that this is what I want. I want to guide and lead people. And I found myself in the same 2-year cycle where at the end of 2 years, I would get bored and want to move on. And I realized that that was completely self-created and that it was time to go inward and to do the work to reconnect with myself, because I had been outsourcing my power, my happiness, and my success to jobs and to companies. And so I went on my own self-discovery and personal growth journey. And this is how I have ended up as a purpose coach to high achievers who are really successful on paper, but something is missing. I know that feeling all too well. And I ignored that feeling and I stayed the course and I pushed through. Now I know and I can tell you what that feeling is. That feeling is your intuition sending you a message that you are out of alignment. You're out of alignment with your truth and you're out of alignment with your gifts. So many people have incredible self-awareness when it comes to where their blocks are and why they're stuck and all of the reasons that their inner narrative is like negative. People are so self-aware of their blocks and their limitations. What they are not self-aware of is their gifts and their unique soul assignment, their bigger why, what they're here to create. And these were the answers I was looking for. And I was looking for these answers in all the wrong places because I was looking everywhere outside of myself. And when I realized that everything I was seeking was within, game changer. So if you're ever interested in starting your own journey You can reach out to me. My contact information is available in the show notes. Let's roll into the podcast episode. Erica is a serial entrepreneur. She built a multi-six-figure food business from scratch back in 2019 with no experience in the food industry. Took her vegan protein cookie dough, which I've actually tried. They were absolutely delicious, to over 200 stores nationwide, grew her online community organically to over 300,000 followers in a few short years. And you're going to get a taste of why, because she's just such a relatable human. And she's spoken on stages in front of thousands of people. And this is where I feel like the twist comes in, Erica, because when Erica speaks on stages, she's not necessarily talking about success or how to build a profitable food business from scratch. She's actually talking about how her business failed. And she's actually talking about embracing failures and embracing all past versions of ourselves and how that has transformed her as a human. And now she's building a community around embracing failures, empowering people through her life experiences to step into the best versions of themselves. So Erica has a new podcast that she has just started, which, Erica, I'm celebrating you. This is freaking amazing. Her podcast is called You're Not a Bad Person. And she also has a newsletter called The Flossom Humans, which I can't wait to get into these names, Erica, because Flossom, you're not a bad person. There's obviously a common thread here, and you have a really potent message to share. So I'm really excited to have you here and to be having this conversation, because these conversations are all about people who are doing unconventional, extraordinary things, like just by being themselves, because they're listening to a greater calling. I wanted to start by calling out that you shared, this is on your website, that you stumbled across a personal development podcast on your desk one day, and that it led you to quit your job and book a one-way ticket to Southeast Asia. And this changed your life. So tell us a little bit more about that and any of like the past meaningful experiences that have like led to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So that was such a good intro. So thank you. That was really great. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because I think you're a badass and I love talking all things failure and entrepreneurship and all the things. So yeah, in 2018, I want to say, I was working a 9-to-5 job. I was at this one job for about a year and a bit. And it was the most discouraging thing coming out of school and starting to work I worked for a university in a research department, and I was scanning documents. I was doing data entry. I was answering phones. I was doing all the things that I could have done without a degree, but the prerequisite for the position was a degree. So I felt like the system had failed me, because I thought I was getting this really amazing job with a salary and benefits. And then the pay wasn't listed until after I got the job. They told me how much I was making, and I was making less. I was making less than my sister, who worked at a grocery store and dropped out of college. And she also had better benefits than me too. So I don't know. That was a moment of realization for me when I realized, okay, this is not it for me. And I just felt like I was a puzzle piece that was in the wrong puzzle. I just didn't fit in. I didn't fit in with the people that were on my team. I didn't really get along with anyone. I kind of kept to myself, and I listened to podcasts, and I came across this one podcast. You know how it like on your Spotify, it's like, we think you might like this. So I go in and I like clicked the MFCEO Project by Annie Frisella, and I never ever have been exposed to entrepreneurship at this point in my life. You know, I grew up in a very small town, 25,000 people. My parents both work regular jobs. All my friends work regular jobs. I've only ever known that to be the only viable path you could take. You know, I thought in business, you need to have a BBA, you need to have parents who are entrepreneurs, you need to have connections or doors open for you. It's not a path that you can just create for yourself. Like, it has to be pre-paved for you, which is not the truth at all. So I got very curious and I started listening to this podcast, and I just felt like every time I listened to it, I would get so fired up in my desk and I'm like, yeah, like I feel this. This is, this is right. This feels like it's, something that I could do. And it felt very aligned. And it was the only thing that kind of sparked something in me at that time in my life working this job.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing was though, like I kept being like, yeah. And then I would go home and then I would come back to my job the next day. It was like Groundhog Day over and over again. So my actions were contradicting my thoughts. So it got to a point where my contract was going to be renewed and I decided, you know what, like I'm not down for this anymore. I'm not happy here. I know that this isn't the end all be all for me and there's more on the other side. And I was in such a low place in my life. I didn't really care what I was doing. I just thought, I know that I can't be here anymore. I'm at my rock bottom. I was also dealing with like eating disorders and mental health stuff because I just came out of bodybuilding. Like I was prepping and very much in that space while I was working my 9 to 5. So I quit my job and booked a one-way trip to Southeast Asia. And then on that trip is when I kind of discovered entrepreneurship and stumbled across entrepreneurs and got to hear their stories. And the seed was planted at that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's so much thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it gave a really beautiful overview of what made you who you are today. And this is so unrelated, like Southeast Asia. I feel like it's like the magnet for self-healing. Why is that? I've never been. I want to go so badly. My fiance did like a, big self-discovery journey in Southeast Asia over a few months. What is it about Southeast Asia that what was the pull there for you?
I wanted to do Europe, but I couldn't afford it. So I had like a little bit of savings, and I thought, okay, I've always seen photos of Thailand and Bali and all these places, and I've always been drawn to it. And I think for me, the other piece of it was I felt like I wasn't grateful for the life that I had and all of the things that were, that were around me. And I never have immersed myself in a different environment or a different culture. So I think a part of it was, like I want to find myself, but I think I also just need to be grounded and reminded of all of the things that are good in my life, because I just felt like I'd never, seen really outside of the four walls around me. And it definitely did put things into perspective. And I recommend that you do go if you can. It's really far. Like the flight is not fun. It was like 14 hours to Hong Kong and then another like 4 hours to Thailand. But it was the best thing that I did for myself.
You're touching on so many pieces, because I've been thinking about gratitude a lot and how there's kind of two sides to gratitude. Gratitude is so important. We need to be coming from a frequency of gratitude to ultimately attract the things that we really want in life, for sure. But I think there's also another side to gratitude where it's almost like the gaslighting side of it, where it's like toxic gratitude, right? Where you're told like, be grateful for what you have because like this is what you deserve. But when we tell ourselves that, or when we subscribe to the belief that, okay, this is it for me, it kind of, instead of adjusting our frequency to be able to step into an evolved version of our life, of ourselves, it kind of keeps us in that box. And what you're touching on is that the four walls that you're in, the community that you're in, the experiences that you're used to, you recognized that you needed to detach from those things, that like those did not define you. And I think what I'm hearing is that when you removed yourself from those things, because this is what happens for me whenever I travel. It's like I almost need a reminder of the things that I can't run away from. Like these are the parts of me that are going to follow me wherever I go. And sometimes travel or removing yourself from the things you're so familiar with, like that's the answer to be like, oh yeah, okay, like this is me. This is my essence. And there are parts of me that I might not absolutely be in love with, but they're going to follow me wherever I go. And I feel like that's where travel becomes like that transformative experience, because it allows you to come into union with like who you are and your original essence, right? Was that kind of your experience?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It was so many things. Like I think the biggest thing too, I never realized who I was or the things that meant a lot to me. And when I was away,
Mm,
I'm like, okay, you know, like these are all the things that I value. And I think it
mm,
just makes you see things from a different perspective as well in terms of life. Like you have one life and you don't want to spend your whole life in a box doing the same thing. And then, you know, you're going to be 60 or 70 years old and realize, okay, like I spent my whole life working to have this like small window of freedom at the end
mm,
of it. Like, why can't I have that now? And
mm,
the other thing that I'll mention is these people that I was running into on this trip. The one common theme with all the entrepreneurs that I met was they lit up when they talked about what they did for a living.
mm,
Like they had
mhm,
this frequency or this energy to them that I had never encountered in my life before. Typically, when you talk to someone who's working corporate or has a regular 9 to 5 job that they don't necessarily enjoy, no, Monday through Friday, they're ball and chain at the desk, and then Friday 4 p.m. rolls around and they kick off their shoes and they celebrate, and then Sunday, the Sunday scaries kick in, right? And
mhm,
I thought at that time, like when I was meeting these people, I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I want that feeling where I don't fear Mondays and every day is a good day and I'm excited to like wake up and take on the day and do something that is fulfilling. Like I'd rather do something fulfilling every day for my whole life than do something that I absolutely hate for like 40, 50 years and then be, you know, in retirement and have that small window to like enjoy myself.
mm.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy that that is considered like the norm for, right?
Hmm.
What we're talking about, waking up and being excited about your day and owning the life that you have now rather than not waiting to live it 40, 50 years from now. That, the fact that that's crazy is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'm so with you. So when you you obviously had this knowing, right? You've talked about it a few times where you were like at your desk and you were getting fired up, right? You're talking about how these entrepreneurs that you met in Southeast Asia, you could like see this energy and recognize that that energy was within you as well. And you were feeling it, but you weren't living it. And I love that you called that out. You were like, I would get all fired up on my desk. I'd get inspired. And then I would go back to work and it was like, oh, I'm sinking right back into the familiar.
Mm.
So what was that moment where you broke the pattern? Like what ultimately allowed you to break the cycle and step into the energy that you were feeling and fully embody it? Like tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like with that comes a need to face the resistance and the fears and to realize, oh shit, that is resistance and fear. That's not just like, this is not the life that I'm necessarily supposed to live. Tell us a bit more about that.
I think I asked myself two questions and
Mm,
you know, we have fears. Fears are good. You know, anxiety, fears, all of those emotions that we have like rattling on like in our bodies and in our brains, they're there to protect us. Like they're good mechanisms and they serve a need for us.
mm,
However, like you can't let them be a wall and like block you off from doing anything in your life because you're not going to be able to grow. And I remember sitting at my desk one day and I was listening to my podcast and that was what I did. I was a part of a team, but I was very much like kind of in my own lane doing my own thing because I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever. I just had this gut feeling. But I looked around and I looked at everyone who was working at this place and I was one of the youngest people on the team and a lot of people had been there for a long time and were significantly older than me. And I thought like, is this it? Like, is this it? I don't want this to be it. There's no, like,
mm,
if I'm not going to be here for a long time and I don't love this and I'm here now and, you know, I can't see myself being here in like a year or 2 years or 3 years, why am I wasting time? Like, I'm not getting
mm,
paid well. I'm not happy. I'm not respected or appreciated on this team. Like, I don't feel like I fit in here. Like, what? So,
mm,
the two questions I asked myself was, okay, if I leave, what is the worst thing that can happen? And if I stay, like worst and best case scenario for each one, right? And I'm a very type A person, so I have to like write stuff down and like look at everything and kind of analyze stuff before I proceed with a decision. And the pros outweighed the cons. And I'm very grateful in a sense where I have my parents and I have, you know, a safety net. Like if all goes to shit and if I can't get another job or I travel and I realize, oh, I don't want, you know, I don't want to actually do this. I want to go back to my job or I want to, you know, kind of undo the things that I did. Like I have the ability to safely. I know a lot of people are kind of in a different situation where maybe they have a mortgage or kids or a family, or there's different barriers or things that feed into those fears. Like, what if I leave this job that I hate? I can't take care of my family. I can't pay my bills. So you have to make a good decision based on all of those factors and take them into account. But also, you have to do things that are scary too. Like, you can't just completely eliminate and suppress all of your deepest desires in life because you feel secure and you feel like it's the safe thing to do. Like, you have to take risks. Yeah.
Isn't it wild that we are wired to suppress our desires instead of suppressing fears? Like, wouldn't life be so different if our default was like, oh, I'm just going to suppress that fear and just fucking do it anyway? Like, but our brains are truly wired for the opposite, because what we truly desire is, like, our brain likes to look at it as on this linear timeline. Like, no, it's out there. You're not ready for that yet. And I love that you've talked about like wasting time, because at the end of the day, time is a complete construct. And if we're using that as an excuse, like, you had the wisdom, which is so beautiful. You were listening to your intuition, Erica. And I feel like in our early 20s, it's really easy to default to not listening to our intuition. So that's really special. But the fact that you were like, okay, this doesn't feel right, even though it's what everyone else is doing. Like, I'm not going to take that at face value, and I'm going to do what my intuition, my gut, my heart is telling me to do. So I love that. I love that intuition has played such an important role in your life. And I think when we talk about purpose, when I think about purpose, I think a lot of people overcomplicate this idea of purpose, right? It's like this big word. It's like you have this one purpose in life, right? But like, if I was going to boil down what purpose actually means from what I've discovered and from what I've read and from what I've researched, purpose is really just about listening to your intuition and trusting that your intuition is bigger than you. It's like actually calling for you to create something that's bigger than you. So I guess I'm talking myself into my next question for you, Erica, which is, what does purpose mean to you? How do you define it? How do you relate to it in your life? Because I know that one of the questions that you're now answering with your community and with your podcast is, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my passion? So what does it mean to you?
It's like what lights you up, and it doesn't have to be one thing. That's, you know, like my purpose has changed and evolved over the past 4 or 5 years since I pursued entrepreneurship. Like, at first, when I embarked on this journey, I didn't really ask myself that question. It was more so, these are the things that I want, you know, like I want to create this multi-million-dollar cookie dough company, and I want to create this product that everyone loves, and I want to be a household name, and I want to be recognized. And it was very surface level. And I think a lot of people kind of fall into that trap as well when they first get into business. They want, you know, the income and the bells and whistles, and they want to make their own schedule and be their own boss. And that's all great, but a lot of it's not realistic, and a lot of it is also not fulfilling. Like, when you get the watch or get the car or get that 10K a month or land that client, that's great, but you know, like, you can only get so much of that. And I think for me, like, when I started building my business, I fell into my purpose, which was like, I'm here to serve others. And that's the end goal. But the vehicles that get me there look very differently. I was serving others with my product, now I'm serving others with my podcast and sharing my story, or speaking on stages, or creating this community around vulnerability and self-acceptance, and having these conversations that are difficult to have and maybe a little bit controversial and may make people very uncomfortable, but they're necessary, right? So I think for me, I'm just here to serve. And one of my favorite quotes ever is, we're best equipped to help the person we used to be. And, I hope that someone's listening to this podcast at their desk and they're in the same boat, as I was several years ago and didn't really know what to do. Maybe they have this burning desire to pursue something. And I believe if there's something that's in your heart that you feel called to do, like, it's there for a reason and you shouldn't ignore it. It's meant for you. It's placed there for a reason. And when you start to pursue it, you're going to uncover and learn so many things about yourself. And even if it doesn't work out, which mine didn't, it still did work out for me, because the more you take swings and the more you try something, you're getting one step closer to figuring out what is your path. You're kind of like chopping the weeds and building your own path. And you understand, like, every time you fail or every time you realize, okay, that's not for me, you're adding and accumulating all the things that, okay, these things aren't for me, which means I'm this much closer to finding out what is for me. And I know personally for me, I will never launch a food business again. I'm grateful that I did it, but I will never do it again. But I do love, like I said, like the community aspect of it and being vulnerable and sharing my story. And that's why I'm here, is to serve. So I guess to answer your question, like, for someone to find their purpose, just like sit down and figure out, what do I love? Like, what do I love to do? What brings me the most joy, right?
Yeah. I think to answer that question, it does take some detaching from the environment and the world that you're in every single day, because where I think what I've been reflecting on lately is, like, if you're not taking those moments to detach, and detaching can look as simple as like going and taking a shower or a bath, right? It could be meditating, could be going to take a bath, could be like just taking a walk to nowhere, but taking a moment to just like go inward. Because if you're not taking those moments, where do you draw the line between who you are and who the world expects you to be? Because we're constantly bombarded, whether it's, looking at social media posts, we don't even realize, right? It's just like that subtle, like, comparison trap is happening at the subconscious level, whether it's like, being a partner, a daughter, a sister, whatever, a friend. It's like you're constantly kind of playing into those labels without even knowing it. And so if you're not taking those moments to detach, which I think that's what you're saying, take those moments to pause and be like, what do I actually love? Because if we don't, then where do we I don't even think a lot of people realize that what they want, what they think they want, is actually what the world wants them to want. And where we really hit the jackpot, in terms of, this is my belief, where we hit the jackpot is like when you actually connect with your heart. You're like, what do you want? Because I've been asking myself that question for 20 years, probably. And I'll never forget, when I was 16, someone asked me, like, if money was no option, what would you do with your life? What would you want? And the answer has not deviated. I asked myself that question like last year, and it was the same answer as when I was 16. And I was like, whoa, like, mind blown that, holy shit. Like, I haven't pursued that dream, which is to like do yoga every day and teach people and host retreats and like live on a beach. And I'm like, that's still in me. That's not a coincidence. To your point, that is in me for a reason. And the fact that it's still there, it's like, okay, maybe I've been resisting it because of the roles that I've been playing in life, right? Like what people expect me to be. Anyway, I'm going on my little tangent.
I love it, though. Yeah, it's great. It's very relatable, because I was left with that question, like, who am I, when I shut my business down in January, because everyone sees you as this one thing. And it's the same for, if you're working corporate and you're a certain role and you've done a certain thing for a certain number of years, like, that's what you do most of your time. So obviously you kind of identify yourself as this person, but really you're your own person. And this is just a part of like what you do. It's not who you are. And, you know, I ended up in Mexico doing ayahuasca, like asking like, yo, what am I here for? Why am I here? What's the point of all of this? Like I went through a huge identity crisis this year trying to figure out like, who am I? And am I allowed to reinvent myself? Can I just randomly switch up from being the cookie dough girl to this new, more edgy version of myself that's having these conversations? And are people going to be down for that? Because do people expect me to still be that person that I was because I'm not really that person anymore? So I think the takeaway is here too, like you can be whoever you want to be and you don't need anyone's permission. And it's okay to not know too. Like we're all just kind of trying to figure it out along the way. It's not like, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is how I look. This is, you know, how I act and the things that I do in my day. Like, no, you can, it's trial and error. You can figure out what works for you and what doesn't, you know?
100%. And don't you find that like, no matter where you are, right? You're talking about reinvention, which is, I'm so glad that this is a topic that's come up because I feel like life without reinvention would be fucking boring, first of all. And like, I'm reinvented every single day. Like I wake up as a different human every single day, slightly different from the day before, maybe vastly different. And that's so fun. It's so fun. I was watching this documentary about Ram Dass, and I think it's called Becoming Nobody. And he talks about how like our bodies, it's like a spacesuit. You've just been wearing this spacesuit for so long that you feel like if you were to take it off and put something else on, it's like, ew, yuck, like this is what I'm used to. But when you're talking about reinvention, I feel like it's just like switching out the suit and like not really giving a fuck about who's gonna be resistant toward it or judge you about it. So this is coming full circle where I'm like, don't you find that when you show up in your truth, no matter what day, hour, minute of the day, it could change, right? Your truth an hour from now could be different than what it is right now. But when you show up in your truth, unafraid of like how it's going to be received by other people, that you naturally attract the people, the opportunities, the experiences that are meant for you in that moment. And like, sometimes you're going to show up with the truth where, you know, 200,000 of 300,000 people that you've collected over the last few years, because I know you have a very like big, organic social media following. And if those people were to fall away, yeah, it would hurt, but like, they're not here for the rest of your journey. You're here to serve the other people that you're going to attract. I think that's something that I've been reconciling with myself because, you know, we tend to hold on to things, relationships, experiences we just hold on to them for too long. Like those served us in the past, and it's not necessarily what's going to serve us or serve others in the future. So I guess my loop is, don't you find that when you show up in your authenticity, in your truth, vulnerable, that you attract the people that you are meant to serve in this moment, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny because I talk about this in my first episode of my podcast that's coming out next week. Like it's
amazing.
Perfect. Yeah. Cause you know, I feel like people feel like they have to be a certain way. Society paints things as good or bad or whatever. Right. And being vulnerable and, you know, we all go through shit in life and a lot of people don't like talking about it and they don't want to be perceived a certain way. So they suppress it and they carry it for a long time. Right. And there's a lot of shame and guilt. And that's kind of the whole concept of my podcast is like, you're carrying all this stuff, but you need to let it go. You need to release it. And I think what you're doing is amazing. You're putting out content that is vulnerable and relatable, and you're going to draw in the right people for you because you're being authentic to you. And I completely agree. You bring in people that match your frequency. And if you're holding back and being someone that is not like you're not meant to be, that's not authentically you, you're going to match that energy and bring in people that are not meant for you. And you're going to run into conflict, and you're not going to have those deep, dark desires that you have of those opportunities are not going to come because you're not matching the frequency that you need to be at in order for them to come through. So that's something else that I learned as well. Like my biggest fear was, okay, if I'm putting all this stuff out there, like all of the struggles, all the things that I've been through that are not acceptable or quote unquote bad, like, am I gonna be canceled? Are people not gonna like me anymore? Am I not gonna be accepted? Because at the end of the day, all of us just want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be looked at a certain way. And sometimes those thoughts get the better of us, so we just don't do anything at all. There's like fight, flight, and freeze, and people get in freeze mode, and they're like, okay, I can't do anything. And if you're not moving at all, like you're actually moving backwards, in my opinion. So yeah.
Because it's kind of that concept that you learn in business school of the time value of money. If like your money is sitting here doing nothing, it's actually with inflation and everything, it is shrinking. The value of it is shrinking, much like time. The time that you are spending in stagnation or doing nothing is actually wasted potential, right? It's like you could be stepping into the version of you that is literally your core essence, your core truth, and like living in your authenticity. And every minute that you spend not doing that, the world is a slightly darker place as a result. That's like, there's a line, I have this in my notes that I think I lifted it from your website. It's, I want to show that we can embrace the ugly parts of ourselves. In fact, if we don't, we aren't able to unlock our greatest potential. Just love this line so freaking much. Can you say more about this? Can you just elaborate? Give us your wisdom.
Yeah. I use this analogy. So, it's in my podcast trailer. And I guess imagine like the most beautiful garden. And there's lots of flowers, there are, lots of buds on there, they're about to bloom, and there's one weed, and you ignore the weed, and the weed is there, right? And you're like, okay, it's fine. But the weeds overtake the garden, and more and more and more and more start popping up in this garden. And then they overtake the flowers, and then the flowers aren't able to fully bloom. And now you just have a garden full of weeds. So I think people, again, like tying into what we just talked about, like they sweep stuff under the carpet, or they don't want to talk about things or live their truth because they fear the judgment of other people, of society. And when you do that, it's like you're carrying bricks in a backpack up a mountain, and you just like keep adding in more and more and more and more bricks. And you're like, oh, this is fine. Like I can keep doing this, but it gets to be too much at a certain point. And it's unbearing for you. You're not able to grow into the highest version of yourself if you're carrying all this stuff and you're not able to process it and face it. And most people can't. Most people can't face the darkest, hardest parts of themselves. And it's a way of protecting ourselves. Like we have a subconscious for a reason. Like everything kind of goes in there. That's like, I don't know if you've seen Inside Out. Have you seen Inside Out or heard of it?
I have.
Did you see the second one?
The second one.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I do need to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's like, I think it's anxiety or whatever. They have like the little glowing ball, and it's like something bad or embarrassing that happens, and they just like throw it back into the subconscious. They're like, I don't want her to deal with this. I'm protecting her. Don't worry. She'll never have to think of this or face this again. But you can only do that for so long. And then eventually the gate's going to open. It's all going to come flooding out. And for me, like, I think, again, going back to like, we're most capable of helping the person we used to be. And you can create the most impact if you share your story. And if you aren't sharing your story and your experiences, not just the wins, like building the successful company and having a big team and, doing all the things that everyone aspires to do, if you're not sharing the hardships and the struggles that you've gone through, you're doing yourself and you're doing others a disservice. And it comes down to the energy as well. Like if you're putting out stuff that's meant to help people and your intention is, I want to help people. And I know how hard it was going through this in my life. And if I can help someone avoid making that same mistake, or if I can make someone feel less alone and don't know like what they're going through, then I've served my purpose. And that's what that's what we're doing, right? Like we want to help people. And I wish more people understood the power that they have with their voice, because a lot of people underestimate how much the world needs them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the analogy of even the bricks, because the bricks could symbolize as well. Whenever we repress our truth, fear, resistance, whatever, when we choose to repress it, it doesn't go anywhere. It stays in our body and it crystallizes into shame and guilt and all of the negative emotions that can motivate us. But do they motivate us to our highest success? No. Mm-hmm. And the bricks are like lifeless, right? It's just sediment. It's lifeless. Mm-hmm. And imagine if you replaced the bricks with things that were alive, people, even like the things that you actually want to create, rather than this just like this dead weight that is just crystallizing in you. That's not only holding you back from your highest self, your highest potential, your highest service. It's actually like the opposite of being in service to the people you're here to serve, right? It's like these people are missing out on the best version of you because you're fucking choosing to be weighed down by this bag of dead bricks, right? Like, I have such toilet humor, and a bag of dead bricks makes me think of a bag of dicks. Like, I don't know why that is.
I got the visual, so thank you.
But truly, right? Like, I think a couple of times you've brought up this idea of failures, right? And embracing failures. And it's so interesting because as you talk about this, like, sometimes it just takes hearing something outside of yourself to have the light bulb moment. And it's like, failures by whose standards? Because you've talked about how failures aren't actually failures, right? Like, it didn't work out, but it did work out. But it didn't work out by whose standards, right? You chose to see the quote unquote, I'm saying failed in air quotes, business, right? As a win, because you were able to connect the dots between, okay, this business was weighing me down. This was my bag of bricks that I chose to let go, right? My ego wanted to hold on to it, but I chose to let go of it because I was feeling the calling to share my truth and my light and my service in a different way. And you did that. But it's so interesting because I think we do get hung up on other people's definitions, right? It's like, a failure? Really? Nothing is a failure. But we're constantly like dealing with these narratives that are basically programming, right? We're downloading this programming constantly. And I've caught myself thinking about that a lot in my own business. And I'm a solopreneur, okay? Like, I'm not launching a food empire here. I don't have to deal with like manufacturing shit. I'm dealing with I'm dealing what you're currently dealing with, Erica, building your online business. But it brings up the same shit. It brings up the same fear of what if I don't make a shit ton of money doing it exactly this way? What if I don't prove that I can do this alone? And it's like, whoa, that the fact that those things are even there, it's like, whoa, okay. I didn't realize that programming was so deeply anchored within me. So what has been your experience with doing the actual reprogramming? You talked about the ayahuasca. I kind of want to talk about this ayahuasca ceremony. Like, what was your biggest takeaway from this? Like, let's bring it back. What was your biggest learning or aha moment from that?
This could be like a 10-hour conversation, but I ended up journaling like 20 pages or something when I was there. It was a lot.
We're collapsing time here, Erica.
Yeah, I know. I'll try to like give you the spark notes, but my whole reasoning of going to do ayahuasca was like, I wanted clarity around my future. And I realized like all of this is kind of tying together. Like, I can't move on and grow and become the next version of myself if I don't face and accept my past. And I've been through a lot in my life that I suppressed. Like, I swept a lot of stuff under the carpet because I had shame. Again, like, I was very afraid of what people would think, or if it would discredit my success, quote unquote, that I've had with my business. And when I did ayahuasca and I did peyote as well, I was met with the version of me that I had so much shame around. And it was like I was back in that room, in that place. I could feel the emotions. I could see the people. I could hear, like, it was like reliving the things that were a trauma for me on a loop. And it was weird because it was almost narrated as well. Like I had this problem for a long time in my life with self-love. Like I struggled to get, the love that I wanted from my parents and partners, and was never fully loved and accepted for who I was. So I was trying to fill that void in other ways. And I never really realized until I did ayahuasca. And it's like, okay, in order for you to like become this version of you that you so deeply want to be, you have to accept and embrace all these parts of you, because you need to share it with the world. And how do you expect the world to accept you if you can't even accept you? Like, it's going to be really fucking hard for you if you're still so ashamed and hold so much guilt and regret around this version of Erica. So that's kind of what came out of that. And I had all these really like mini epiphanies, I guess you would call them, during that ceremony. There's 2 ceremonies. And I remember coming home and sitting with my feelings. And we talked about, removing yourself from your environment, which is amazing. And I think everyone should do it, just to fully like tap into what's going on like in their brain with no distractions. Right. And going back to the same environment was really hard for me, because it's like, okay, I'm at home with my parents still. I'm living the same life that I was before. And I need to integrate all the stuff that I just saw and felt to make this transition into the next version of myself happen. Right. Because you can't just have all these things come up and be like, oh, wow, okay, cool. Like, this is great. Yeah, totally. And then you just don't do anything about it. A lot of people get in that cycle. They have these realizations and then they go back into work the next day or whatever. It's just the same thing over and over. You have to break the cycle. So I ended up, did therapy, wrote down stuff, took time to like go and be with nature and be with myself, be present with myself, and to really figure out all of these pieces that were kind of coming together. And then the failure as well. Like you talked about all the what ifs, like what if this doesn't work out, or what if I share this information with the world and then I can't take it back and no one accepts me and no business will want to work with me. No one will want to sponsor me. I have no clients. Like, you have all of these things come through that, again, they're trying to protect you. They're thoughts that are there for a reason, but they also can fuck with your head like a lot. And you need to get a hold of them and not let them overtake your actions. So yeah, with failure, if you Google failure, literally the definition, it says lack of success. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything else. And for me, success is subjective. It's not objective. And success for me is waking up and doing what I love. That's all that success is for me right now at this point in my life. It has evolved and it has changed over the years. Before it was, I want to do $1 million a year in revenue. I want to make X amount of money. I want to, very materialistic. I want to live in X house. I want to, whatever you want it to be, right? Which a lot of people have. But for me, it's a feeling that I have. And at the end of the day, if people look at failure as, or what I did as failure, and they're like, oh, she fucked up or whatever. Oftentimes the people that are judging you haven't done fuck all with their lives. And it's a way of them projecting, because they think, oh, wow, like she tried something and it didn't work. And like, I have the same tools and resources and ability to do the same thing, but I didn't make it happen. And it's a mirror. You're a mirror for people. And the way that people feel about you and judge you is not a reflection of you, it's them. So that was kind of like a little bit of a ramble, but that was the past few months for me, is like a lot of like inward work for sure. Yeah.
I love what you just said about the judgment piece being a projection, because it's so funny, right? It's one thing to know something. I have goosebumps right now. I get goosebumps whenever something really lands. And it's like, I thought I knew this, but you just gave me access to another layer of depth. And I've always known, well, I shouldn't say always. Let's say for the last couple of years, I've known that a judgment is a projection. It's like whatever you are judging someone else for is a reflection of something that's calling to be healed within you. But the way you just said it was like, okay, if I'm judging you and I'm saying, or anyone, okay, if I'm judging you and I'm saying, okay, Erica failed, like that's so embarrassing, you know, it's like I'm actually just seeking out a confirmation bias. I'm seeking out confirmation that that is in fact scary. Now I can check it off my list of I never need to do that, like because I'm too scared to do it. And I think we are constantly seeking confirmation of our own limiting beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how the brain works. It's constantly seeking like to reinforce its own truth. That's, well, it's definition of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that's what judgment is. When we're judging someone or we're judging ourselves, it's really just us, our ego being like, told you so. I'm just seeking the same, I'm seeking the message that confirms what I believe deeply in my subconscious. And this came up for me recently because I've been doing a lot of money healing this year. A lot of money healing.
Love that.
Money and wealth healing. And I had 2 sales calls in like the last couple of weeks and both did not convert. And I know in my inner knowing that that's not a reflection on me, my success, my worthiness, that like, okay, this is like moving on. I'm here to serve people. Like how can I serve the next person? But I had a little bit of a relapse to like, oh my God, I don't know. I started like really doubting myself. And I was like, why are these, I thought that I had healed this, but it was that it was still so deeply anchored, right? We're constantly healing layers and layers and layers. And my brain was like, oh, there's another confirmation that this might be true, that you can't be successful and make money doing what you love. So I don't know, maybe you should doubt yourself. And I was like, whoa, that my brain is actually on the lookout for confirmation of these limiting beliefs. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Like I have the same thing happen to me as well. But I think, again, as you're going through this healing process, you're given more and more tools to handle stuff. And kind of similar, but not really. Like a friend of mine went through a breakup recently and she was saying, she said, I know, she's like, if this were me like a year or 2 ago, I would have spiraled and I would have lost control of everything. Like I'd be in bed alone, not talking to anyone, isolating myself, filling my face. Like now she's like, I'm going out, I'm still living my life. I have all the tools that I need to handle this and cope with this. And those thoughts still come in, right? Like, you know, what did I do? Was it me? Is it da 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 da? All those self-doubt, limiting beliefs, however you feel about yourself, right? And it's like, okay, I have all those things. They're still there. And I think they're always going to be there in a way. They just get quieter. And you also have the ability to handle them a lot better as you grow and you move through seasons in your life. And you learn all these different tools and trips to be like, okay, actually, this isn't true. And my brain is just trying to protect me. And this is actually the truth. And this is the situation. And I think it's amazing that you recognize that you caught it. Like you had that thought come in and you're like, whoa, okay. Like I see what you're doing and nah, I'm not letting it happen. And you kind of brought yourself back down because some people don't have the tools to do that. They like let themselves spiral and then they get into this place where they're self-sabotaging and it's just a loop, you know, and then maybe they go back to their 9 to 5, maybe they give up, whatever, right? Because it's hard. It's hard building a business and doing something new, but it's even harder overcoming those limiting beliefs that you have because you're doing something you've never done before, right? And it's scary and it's new and there's lots of feelings.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, fear is an incontrovertible sign of growth. It means that you're stepping into a whole new evolution. And if there was no fear, you're not growing. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword where you know the fear is coming up. You know that you're going to have to face it. It's choosing whether or not you're going to feed into it or just let it be there and do the thing anyway, right?
Yeah.
What fear, we'll say, what limiting belief are you aware of right now that you're working through and that you're like doing your badass boss shit despite it? What are you working through right now?
So I mean, my podcast, that was like a huge thing. I announced in April of 2023 that I'd be launching a podcast, and
Mm.
it's August 2024. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the thing that I constantly told myself was, okay, if I do this, you know, all the healing that I've done this year, I think everything happens for a reason, like you said. And I did healing, I worked on myself, I accepted parts of myself and lifted that rug up and saw a lot of ugly things that are now no longer there that I've dealt with. And um, my fear was when I put this information out into the world and when I start sharing parts of me that people weren't expecting, that I'm going to lose a lot of people. And
Mm.
people are not going to look at me the same way and they're going to discredit everything that I've built. Like I've busted my ass. I built a business for 4 years. I think I've proven myself in that sense, but there's a whole nother layer of me that I've never really revealed because I've had all of these underlying fears and limiting beliefs that, okay, if this information comes out, like no one's going to see me the same. I'm never going to be loved. I'm never going to, get the dream partners that I want to partner with in terms of like brands. Uh, there's all these things that kind of came up. But again, I realized if you're not living your authentic self, like you're not going to get the things that you deeply desire. And you're also not going to be able to bring in the things that are meant for you. And
Mhm.
I've just accepted that once I step into this truly authentic version of myself, like anything that is, it's like a magnet, anything that is pushed away or naturally
Mhm.
falls off or whatever, it's not meant to stay. You can't force things to stay. And when things leave, that makes space for new things to come in. And that's how
Mhm.
I'm perceiving it is okay, like
Yeah.
maybe I'm not going to cater to the 300,000 people that follow me. Maybe I'm going to cater to like a third or, a fourth or whatever. But I'd rather have greater impact on a smaller percentage of people than kind of, help a lot more people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, you're
yeah.
also, you might serve a third of the existing audience, but
Hmm.
it's the massive audience that you are not currently serving that's waiting for your message,
Hmm.
right? That's
Hmm.
waiting to be attracted. And I love what you said about the magnet because I think often in terms of like the law of attraction. And if we think that there's like let's say two, there's probably endless versions of this magnet, but you've got the magnet that's attracting all the things that you don't want because you're like in anxiety and you're in that frequency and you're focusing on the things you don't want, where you're actually attracting them because that's what you're thinking about. And then you've got the magnet of if you can bypass those thoughts, maybe not bypass, but honor them, make space for them, but choose to align yourself with what you actually want, which is focusing on abundance and focusing on the endless field of possibilities. Then you start attracting with that magnet. And it's like, what magnet do you want to be aligned with?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so simple, but it's not easy. Like it does take work, energetic work every single day. What is your what do your kind of energetic practices look like? How do you stay in this? How do you stay at the level that you're at and continue to kind of like, evolve 2%, 3% every day? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to like your intuition, like you said, just being so in tune with yourself. And,
Mm.
it comes down to like moving my body, eating intuitively, but also like nourishing and taking care of myself. Because when you fall into entrepreneurship, there's a very heavy hustle culture that is attached to it. And I fell into
Yeah.
that and I completely neglected my own needs for the longest time. Like I wasn't working out. I'd wake up and the first thing I would do was check my emails, which you don't want to read a cease and desist at like 7 in the morning because that'll just send you down like a fucking spiral. So I learned from all of that. I had to go through all of that and get burnt out and understand that that's not sustainable and I can't do that. So now it's like, okay, first thing I do when I wake up, I don't touch my phone. I move my body. I sit with myself in silence and eat breakfast and I take regular breaks. I get outside. I touch grass. And
Mm.
the other thing, like in terms of consuming stuff, like, yeah, you consume food, but also the things you watch, the things you read, everything billboards, like anything and everything has an impact on your energy and your mental health and your overall well-being. And I try to preserve as much as I can, because we have an energy bank and you can only spend so much energy in certain places, and then you have to recharge it. You can't just like spend endless amounts. And a big thing this year for me has been saying no to things that are not aligned with where I want to go. And I'm a people pleaser. And I remember like when I first got on LinkedIn or got on social media, and every single person that messaged me, I'd be like, yeah, like, let's get on a call. Let's get on a call. Like, I'll help you. I'll do this. I'll do this. I was going on my whole calendar. By the end of the day, I'd look at my calendar and I'm like, holy fuck, I don't have time for myself. Like, I'm getting on all these calls with people because I feel like I have to. And I learned, I'm like, okay, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to yourself. So, and no is a complete answer, by the way. Like if someone messages you and they ask you something, you can be like, no, I can't, period. Like you have to be like, no, I'm sorry. I have this and this and this and this and this and this. Like you can if you want, but you need to have like boundaries in your life, and boundaries with social media, boundaries with like when you go to bed. Like there's all these things that you kind of need to have in place to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Someone said recently somewhere, I read it somewhere, and he's like, I have to tend the garden and take care of the garden so I can give the people food, which I love. I love gardens. I have a lot of garden analogies, but
yes. We love garden analogies. We love earthy analogies. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Someone literally, I'm so aligned with so much of what you shared. And sometimes I fall into the trap of looking at my phone from bed. I really, really try not to, because I know that it's an instant energy suck. So interesting how like, you're still like, but I'll just do it this one time.
The dopamine.
Exactly. And I'm hosting a masterclass in the next week, and I've been sending a lot of like direct invites, like, because again, the masterclass is in service. Like I'm really excited about this, and I think I was getting excited to see like who responded. And I looked at that this morning, and there was a DM from someone who was like, "Can't make it. Love the hustle though." And my immediate response to the word hustle was, ugh. That's not what I'm going for. Like hustle, I'm like anti-hustle right now. But I definitely, as a solopreneur, I fell for the same traps. Or like, I'm not even in a year. I'm almost a year into my business, and I've had to have a hard look in the mirror about hustle culture. And I think everything that you shared around having boundaries is like, okay, let's detach from this external culture that is telling us that we constantly need to be doing, producing and proving ourselves, because that is coming from a place of lack and a place of scarcity. And it's just so interesting that was the response that I got. And I immediately paused and I was like, what about my message like conveyed hustle? And of course, this is me like overanalyzing, being like, was it me that conveyed hustle, or is this just their mindset? Because I'm like, man, that is not what I'm about. I'm not. So I almost responded being like, hustle's not what I was going for, but I was like, I'm not going to put that into their field. Like I'm just going to honor them and give them the space that they need. But yeah, it was so interesting. Anyway, Erica, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you envision for yourself? And I'd love to also hear what you envision like for the world.
I hope the world's a little better in 5 years. I hope groceries are a little more affordable, but it's funny because I went to Staples and I bought scaffolds, like these giant white sheets of paper, and I put them on my wall this past weekend, and I just brain dumped. Like I had a mind map. So I had like my name, and then it's like the goal, right? Like I want to help women tap into their fullest potential and overcome any struggles they may have, whether it be personally or professionally, because they're intertwined. Like if you're not right with your head, you can't get right with your business. They are one and the same, right? So it's like, okay, here's 100%. The goal, and how do I want to get there? So it's like, what are all the things that I can do in the next few years to help get to these people and help these people overcome all of their things? And I think like I want to write a book. I want to have my podcast and grow my podcast. And I just want to build out a community of like really amazing humans who want to be better. And I just want to step into this new version of myself and fully embrace this version of myself with no shame, which I've never done. It's been like I'm almost 30 now, and I've like hid parts of myself from the world for like 10 years, which the bricks, they got really fucking heavy, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just exhausted. And I feel like now with this new chapter in my life, I feel like I have so much more space to do more, and I can help more people. And I just want to impact 1 million people. I want to impact 1 million people and help 1 million people globally, and continue to share my story and wake up and feel good and love what I do. That's my success, is loving what I do. And for the past year, I was miserable and doing something that I felt like I had to do because of how others saw me. And I felt like I had to prove something. And now I feel like I have nothing to prove, and I'm just here for me, which feels so good. So that's in a nutshell what I plan to do.
I love that so much. So much. You are making the world a better place just by being you. So we're going to go into a little lightning round to close out our conversation. But I feel like this is an important question to ask before we go into the lightning round, because I'm sure there will be people listening that are like, okay, but all right, I'm like taking all this in, but what do I do? So what advice would you give to someone who's feeling that nudge, feeling that kind of intuitive nudge within them, that pull towards something greater? They're about to do something big, but they're probably facing the resistance and the fears that we've talked about. What advice would you give to that person in that moment?
I think reaching out to people who have done what you want to do is really helpful. I didn't do that early enough in my journey. I kind of just went all in, and I almost wish that I did that prior or right at the beginning stages. People who are on your same level, but then also people who are a little bit further ahead of you and can give you some wisdom. Like, I think that's great. And LinkedIn's a great place to do that. Maybe you follow someone on Instagram, or you know someone in your town or whatever, and you can just send them a message and be like, hey, I'm actually super curious about what you do. Or it doesn't even have to be someone who's doing specifically what you want to do, but maybe they're an entrepreneur, right? And I think community is huge. Like, I started my business in Ottawa, and Ottawa, there's parliament, it's all government, So all my friends were government, and I felt like I couldn't go to any of them about my problems with my business. And I felt so alone in it. And there were days when I didn't want to leave my bed. And I don't ever want anyone to feel that way. Like, you need to have people around you that you can talk to and go through things with. So I think that's like the biggest piece of advice that I could have for someone who's in those early days.
Yeah. Surrounding yourself with the right energy. Usually the right energy is different energy, because wherever you are, if you know that you're going somewhere where you've never been, where you're going, right? Like, and I think it's important to acknowledge and honor that where you are right now, all the tools that you've acquired, the energies that you're surrounded with are probably not going to get you where you're going. And it's so, I think surrounding yourself, the people that you're surrounded by is absolutely huge. Energy is so contagious. And if you're someone with this big dream, an innovator, a creator, like Erica, you're here to like make big waves in unconventional and extraordinary ways, but you're surrounded by government people who are doing things by the book very linearly. No shit you didn't want to get out of bed. No shit. Like, you were, right? You had the wrong energy. Like, the energy was not aligned with where you were going. And I think for a lot of people, that's a difficult knowing to come to. It's like energy and the people you surround yourself with is everything, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And going somewhere where crazy is not a thing. Like, you don't ever want to be somewhere where someone's like, that's crazy. Cause when I'm with my friends, and one of my closest friends who I actually met, I think I met her on Business Bumble or whatever, when you swipe. Yeah. And we're like, she's one of my closest friends, and we were building our businesses at the same time, but we get together and we have like quote unquote, if someone, like a regular person came in, they'd be like, you are both crazy. But we just are like, what about this? And we can do this. And we can, like, you need to be with someone who fuels you up and feeds into all of those aspirations that you have, rather than trying to be the voice of reason or bring you down. Like, you need to have someone who gasses you up. You also have to be realistic, but I think you have to have people who are on the same wavelength and have those big aspirations, like you touched on, right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, I have 8 questions for this little lightning round. So just, first thing that comes up. This is clearly a no judgment zone. I'm really excited for what comes up for you. Okay, ready for this?
Okay, I'm nervous.
So funny how this happens. The mind. Okay. First question. First thing you do in the morning upon waking up?
I put on my workout clothes and go to workout class. Typically.
Amazing. What's your preferred workout? Or does it change every day?
It depends. I usually go to, like, there's a place called Oxygen. They're a chain in Canada. So I go there. They do like heated Pilates.
We have one in Halifax.
Okay. Yeah. So I do that.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
What book are you reading right now?
I'm actually not reading a book, but the most recent book I read was Feel Good Productivity, which is a really good book. I recommend you read it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. What is your bucket list travel destination?
Europe. I want to go to Europe. I've never been, and I have family there.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to love Europe. It's a whole vibe.
Yeah.
It's like you're still kind of in Western culture, but it's a totally different vibes. Then you come home, you're like, why is North America not like this? Like, why are we not taking siestas in the middle of the day? And why does our food make us feel bloated constantly?
Yeah. I see that. That's a theme. I dropped 3 pant sizes in Europe.
Yeah, but ate bread and cheese every single day. Yeah, you're gonna love that. I hope you make that happen for yourself.
Yeah. Thanks.
Best advice you've ever received? First thing that comes to mind.
Best advice I've ever received. I don't know. I there's so many things. I guess I said a lot of things on here, but yeah, you're best equipped to help the person you be, like the person you used to be. Like, that's the one thing that has, like, always stuck to me. And whenever I put something out into the world, I always think, okay, is this going to help someone? Is this going to benefit someone? So that kind of drives my ship with what direction I go in.
Love it. Your life has a soundtrack. This is the first song.
Oh, I don't know. Let's maybe do Shania Twain. Maybe do Feel Like a Woman.
Right. We love it. Surprising. This is question 6. Okay, we've got 3 left. A surprising skill or hobby that you have that people might not expect.
I don't have it anymore, but I used to show miniature horses up until my early 20s. I had
show?
3. Yeah. So, like, I jumped them. I taught them how to pull me in a cart.
Wow.
Yeah. They're like tiny horses.
I don't know why I picture you as, are you tall? I feel like I remember you being tall.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like you being tall with the contrast of a miniature horse is it's just funny.
It was funny. Yeah. It's like the tallest girl with the shortest horse.
That's amazing. Okay. If you could recommend one book or a podcast that changed your perspective on life, what would it be?
I love him, Ed Milet, the Ed Milet Show. And he has a book called The Power of One More. So we'll give him both those. I think he's a great entrepreneur.
Cool. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Last question. You can have dinner with any historical or renowned person, dead or alive. Who would it be and why?
I think, and I've met him briefly, but Andy Frisella. So he is the guy that had the podcast I listened to at my desk and kind of sparked this whole journey. So it would kind of be a full circle moment. Yeah.
Maybe he'll be on the You're Not a Bad Person podcast.
Maybe. We'll see. He's a little intense, but I admire him and what he's
He'll be
done,
like, no, you are a bad person.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about living on purpose or why they are not a bad person?
Yeah, just own who you are. Like that's the biggest thing I've learned this year is just embrace and accept all the things that you are currently and that you were in the past. And you can reinvent yourself at any time. Anytime.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Time is just a construct.
It really is. Yeah.
Amazing. And where can people find you and your work? I know you have your podcast, you have your website, your socials.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. I know not a lot of people are on there, but that's like my biggest platform. So Erica Rankin. And then I'm on socials and my handle is Accepting Erica with a C.
Love it. And the podcast, You're Not a Bad Person, is wherever you can find your podcasts. Make sure you tune in, Erica, for this. Like, I'm so excited. I listened to the trailer. I can't wait to hear the first episode. And Erica also has an amazing weekly newsletter. I think it's called The Flossom Humans. Actually, tell us really quick what flossom means, Erica. I love this word. I feel like you coined it.
Yeah, I actually didn't create it, but flossom is you're awesome because of your flaws, not despite them. So you're flossom.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So make sure that you sign up for Erica's newsletter. She's full of like amazing tips, but also wisdom. I don't like to say tips and tricks because that sounds so surface level, and you are anything but surface level, Erica. Thank you so much for being here. This conversation has been, I had so many goosebump moments. I'm looking down because I'm wearing shorts and I saw my goosebumps on my legs. And yeah, I'm so excited for your wisdom to be available to those million people. Everyone who's listening is one of those million people that you're here to help over the next few years. So really grateful to know you. And I'm so happy that you're here to chat with me today.
Likewise, Joss. Thanks for doing this. And I'm rooting for you too. I'm excited to see this take off.
Thanks. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. I'm sure you took so many lessons and many breakthroughs away from this conversation with Erica. All of her details are linked in the show notes. And yeah, if I was going to take one thing away from this conversation, it really would be to embrace failures. I think a lot of people talk about redefining success. What does your version of success look like for you? And I really think that a bigger conversation needs to be had around redefining failure, because there is success, the seed of success in every single failure. So I hope you take something really beautiful away from this. And I'm really excited to hear, what were your aha moments? Drop into the comment section or send me an email, jessica@jessicaokane.com. Thank you so much for being here on this ride. And stay tuned for next week, where I am speaking with Sagute Zidakite, another contact that I met through LinkedIn. She is incredible. She has written a book that I love and that is always on my desk, and that will be next Thursday. Sending so much love. Have an amazing day.